On July 13, 2009, high school students Alexis Nears, Nick Prugo, Diana Tamio, and Rachel Lee parked their cars outside a black house in the Hollywood Hills. According to Nears, who hadn't attended one of these stings before, her peers had been successfully burglarizing the homes of A-list Hollywood celebrities like Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan, Rachel Bilson, Audrina Patridge, and others. So whose house were they parked in front of? None other than Orlando Bloom from Pirates in the Caribbean, who was out of town at the time. The four teenagers walked up to the black mansion, covered their faces to conceal their identities from security cameras. Then, Lee cut a hole in the fence big enough for them to squeeze through. They walked around the house, checking doors and windows for a way to get in. Finally, they found an unlocked door by the pool. They went into Bloom's house and stole more than $500,000 worth of luxury items. Nears, horrified and afraid, screamed and ran outside. She was also pretty drunk, as the story goes. Tabloids dubbed their group the Bling Ring, a burglary team of 7 teenagers infamous for breaking into homes of the rich and famous. But these burglaries weren't totally motivated by money or jealousy. In fact, members of the Bling Ring idolized these celebrities so much that they wanted to dress and be just like them. The closest they could get to becoming their idols was to steal their treasured items. The Bling Ring targeted celebrities who dominated the tabloids and were known to live lavish lives. Most of their targets were women, since the Bling Ring's founding members loved women's fashion. Rachel Lee, their leader, referred to the burglaries as going shopping. They found their targets' home through Google Maps and celebrityaddressaerial.com. The teens figured out their targets' schedules using Facebook, Twitter, and tabloids. More importantly, they knew when their targets were out of town. The Bling Ring had a taste for the finer things. Prada, Chanel, Gucci, Dolce & Gabbana, you name it. Do you know who else had a taste for the finer things? Paris Hilton. The Bling Ring also thought she was dumb, thus making for the perfect first victim. Turns out, they were right. They found a key to her front door in the most obvious place, under a doormat. To add insult to injury, they didn't even need the key because Hilton left the door unlocked. They strolled through the front door and stole designer bras, dresses, alcohol, and money. However, they were smart enough to steal just enough that Hilton wouldn't notice. And she didn't. The Bling Ring burglarized Hilton's home 5 separate times, making sure not to get too greedy. However, greed eventually got the best of them, and when they made off with $2 million worth of jewelry and cash, apparently that was enough for Hilton to notice. Also known as the Hollywood Hills Burglar Bunch, the Bling Ring organized burglaries of several celebrities in Calabasas, California, one of the wealthiest suburbs in the country. Lee and Prugo, the head honchos, were primarily motivated by their love for fashion and media. Rachel Lee grew up in Calabasas with her mother. She was expelled from the public high school and attended an alternative high school called Indian Hills on a creative arts scholarship. She was obsessed with reality television and designer brands and longed to have the luxury items that her favorite reality stars owned. Nick Prugo was also expelled from Calabasas High School and transferred to Indian Hills. He was a shy guy, and Lee quickly took him under her wing. Prugo began partying and taking drugs in Lee's social circle, stealing from his parents to support his lifestyle. This segued into stealing from peers, and finally, from celebrities. They robbed their first home together during the summer after 10th grade and discovered $8,000 cash under the homeowner's bed. They split the money and went shopping on Rodeo Drive. Though he was reluctant to burglarize other homes, Prugo didn't want to risk losing Lee's friendship. Alexis Nears was another member of Lee's social circle at Indian Hills, but she claims she was only involved in one Bling Ring burglary, the one at Orlando Bloom's house. She initially denied any wrongdoing, stating that police never found any stolen items in her possession. However, it came out later that Nears and her 2 sisters had several stolen items in their wardrobe. Security cameras at Bloom's house even caught her in the act. She didn't have a squeaky clean past either and struggled with addiction. Diana Tameo was student body president at Indian Hills in 2008. She showed great promise, was awarded scholarships, and even won Best Smile. However, police later discovered that almost all of her personal inventory consisted of stolen items. Her small stature was helpful to the Bling Ring's crime spree. In one case, she crawled through a dog door to access a house. She was also an undocumented immigrant and was threatened with deportation if she failed to cooperate with the police. Courtney Ames was the stepdaughter of famous boxer Randy Shields. Unlike the others, Ames still attended Calabasas High School and knew Lee for a long time. Through Ames, Lee met the next 2 members of the Bling Ring. Johnny Ajar was Ames' boyfriend, and he used his past criminal knowledge to appraise and resell stolen goods. Ajar had a tough upbringing, being raised in his housing projects as the son of a drug-addicted mother and a criminal father. Before his involvement, Ajar had already spent 2 years in federal prison for drug trafficking. Roy Lopez Jr. worked with Ajar at a restaurant in Calabasas. The Bling Ring recruited him to resell the stolen items, but he participated in at least one burglary. Surprisingly, many of the other members came from wealthy families. Nears was a rising TV personality. Prugo's parents were in the film industry, and Tamayo drove a luxury car. Prugo's father worked at IM Global as the foreign sales agent for Paranormal Activity. Nears' father was the director of photography on Friends, and her mother was a Playboy model in the 1980s. Paris Hilton was the Bling Ring's first and most frequent target, but she certainly wasn't their only. On the night of the 2009 Academy Awards, the Bling Ring snuck into Audrina Patridge's home in the Hollywood Hills through an unlocked door. They stole her jewelry, passport, jeans, and laptop, amounting to $43,000 worth of stuff. Patridge uploaded the surveillance video online, but the burglaries continued. The video ran on TMZ and local LA news stations, yet no one came forward. Rachel Bilson's home was robbed at least 3 times in the spring of 2009. Between $130,000 and $300,000 worth of items were taken during this time, and most were sold on the Venice Beach boardwalk. The Bling Ring targeted Orlando Bloom and Miranda Kerr because Lee wanted Kerr's lingerie collection. The trespassers got in by cutting a hole in the chain link fence. They stole designer clothing, vintage Rolex watches, Louis Vuitton luggage, and collector's art, valued at approximately $500,000. A surveillance video from that night shows 4 teens in hoodies walking up to Bloom and Kerr's home while covering their faces. Lee also idolized Megan Fox's style, so the Bling Ring targeted her home with Brian Austin Green. However, the ring's crowning achievement and ultimate downfall came after breaking into Lindsay Lohan's house. In August 2009, Lee moved in with her father in Las Vegas. However, she couldn't resist coming home for one last job, Lindsay Lohan's house. She and the rest of the Bling Ring stole $130,000 worth of stuff from Lohan's home in the Hollywood Hills. The team continued to conduct surveillance on others, including Miley Cyrus, Zac Efron, Hilary Duff, and Vanessa Hudgens, hoping to invade their homes later on. Coincidentally, E! was filming a reality show about Nears' family when the robberies occurred. The world discovered that Alexis participated in the Bling Ring through the show. The cameras rolled when the LAPD showed up at her home on October 22, 2009 with a search warrant and discovered Rachel Bilson's handbag and Lindsay Lohan's necklace in Nears' possession. She originally denied stealing the items, saying that she had a receipt, but later pleaded no contest. The final heist of Lindsay Lohan's home marked the beginning of the end. The LAPD released their surveillance footage of the Bling Ring stealing from Lohan's home and matched the faces to those of the burglars at other homes in the Hollywood Hills. Tips poured in from people claiming to know the identities of the assailants. Police, however, were already following leads from someone who overheard Prugo and Lee bragging about their exploits on a drunken night out. Prugo, riddled with guilt and anxiety, eventually confessed before police offered him a plea deal. A huge no-no when you're ready to give a confession. He even admitted to crimes that the police weren't even aware of, feeling that was the right thing to do. When asked why he committed these burglaries, Prugo hardly had an answer, simply stating that he followed Lee out of some kind of sisterly love. Police executed search warrants, made arrests, and took down every member of the Bling Ring one by one. It was a high-profile story, and every tabloid, magazine, and newspaper wanted a piece of the pie. In October 2011, Lee pleaded no contest to the burglary of Audrina Patridge's home and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. After 1 year and 4 months, she got out on parole. Prugo pleaded no contest to the burglaries of Audrina Patridge and Lindsay Lohan and was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Ajar, who had previous drug-related run-ins with the law, was sentenced to 3 years in prison. He was released less than a year after sentencing. Tamayo pleaded no contest to the burglary of Lohan's home and was sentenced to 3 years of probation and 60 days of community service. Police apparently threatened her family with deportation and 6 years of jail time had she pleaded not guilty. Ames was sentenced to 3 years probation and 2 months of community service. Several other charges were dismissed on the ethics advice of Detective Brett Goodkin, the lead investigator of the case. Nears pleaded no contest to the burglary of Orlando Bloom's home after learning that he was willing to testify against her. She was sentenced to 180 days in jail with 3 years of probation and a $600,000 restitution to Bloom. Coincidentally, Nears and Lohan were actually in adjacent jail cells at Century Regional Detention Facility, but never spoke to one another. Sadly, Nears was arrested again in 2010 for drug possession, although this time she went to a luxury rehab facility. After her arrest on national TV and very public trial, Nears remained in the limelight. She was recently featured on Entertainment Tonight, detailing her childhood struggles with abuse, addiction, and jail. These 17s and young adults idolize celebrities to such an extent that they are willing to jeopardize their futures for a designer handbag. Hilton and Lohan themselves have run into trouble with the law and escaped with slaps on the wrists. Maybe these kids thought they were untouchable themselves. Hollywood, as usual, capitalized on these burglaries by turning them into films. The Bling Ring aired on Lifetime in 2011. Another movie with the same name starring Emma Stone and Tessa Farmiga premiered in 2013. Paris Hilton even cameoed in the film as herself. The Bling Ring leaves a legacy of what can happen when a group of privileged teens are spoon-fed media from a young age and then use it to their advantage as young adults. Click here to watch one of these next videos. And let us know in the comments section whether or not you think they deserved more time behind bars.